Hello there, world of tankers. Welcome to the channel, and, well, there's about to be a large shift in the meta for the game. Right now, medium tanks and tank destroyers are the most dominant forces in the battlefield. Mainly because tank destroyers have insanely unfair camouflage values, the Hellcat at 82%, the Cryos is sitting upwards of 87% camo. It's ridiculous. You cannot spot tank destroyers within 100 meters, even if they're in the open, especially at lower tiers. I don't know why Wargaming made this decision, but it was a very poor decision at that. Thankfully, Wargaming is nerfing tank destroyer camo values, which we'll be talking about in a moment. But pen values are also getting nerfed for heat and AP shells, meaning that vehicles that used to butter directly through super heavies, especially mediums, are not going to be able to do that anymore. All of these changes are going to hopefully make it so that turbo battles are going to happen less, and the games are going to be more enjoyable for most overall players. So let me know what you guys think in the comments by the time you're done watching today's video. I'll be sharing my personal opinions, and yeah, let's get straight into it and make our way, first of all, talking about the concealment changes, right? So right now, if you're running Camouflage Net on a tank destroyer, you get a 10% buff base, and then that buff turns to 20% when stationary because it doubles. That is an insane amount of concealment, and it allows vehicles that have really good camouflage values to just do whatever they want. I can't tell you how many times I have been in a tank destroyer. In fact, I have a video when I played in the T95 a couple days ago, and in that video I outspotted a light tank because I was sitting still in the open. I killed the light, didn't even know I was there. And it's not that player's fault. How are they supposed to expect in a light tank that can't spot a T95 in the open? But if you go to tier 9 and you take a look at the T95, it actually has surprisingly good camouflage values. It's sitting at almost 80%. It's ridiculous. So next update, Wargaming is taking that 10% buff to 7%, which is a pretty big change. Because when moving your camouflage, sure, it's still going to be like 51%. It's not going to change much there. But while stationary, because the effective value is doubled, instead of gaining 20%, you're going to gain 14%. So it would still be a pretty good camouflage value at 71%, but it's not going to be 77. And I do think that this will at least make it so that light tanks and mediums will be able to spot tank destroyers that aren't in bushes, and it's going to make it so that TDs are just a little bit less effective in terms of their overall camouflage value. I'm happy about this. I think that is going to make the game a little bit nicer in terms of the camouflage values, so I'm happy. Any nerf towards tank destroyer camouflage is a win for me. Then we arrive over to the other changes, right? Well, Refined Gun is going from 15% better dispersion to 11%, and Vstabs is going from 12% better on move to 17%. Now, what's funny is a lot of people gave this a thumbs down when it was announced by Wargaming. I don't really understand why. Right now, Refined Gun is way too strong. Vehicles like the FE2 and 5B183 do not deserve good accuracy. Vehicles that are very inaccurate are supposed to be balanced around having poor accuracy. The fact that Refined Gun is so incredibly strong in Blitz doesn't really make sense. Aiming device in World of Tanks PC only gives you a max buff of like 8%. This is almost double. It doesn't really make sense. So Refined Gun, I'm very happy is getting a nerf, and I think it's fair that Vstabs is getting a buff. Vertical stabilizers is completely irrelevant. I've made multiple videos explaining this, and Wargaming even agreed to me when I told them about it, because Refined Gun makes your aiming circle 15% smaller with this buff. What that means is while you're driving, while you're aiming, while you're moving, it flat makes your gun 15% more accurate, where Vstabs makes your gun 12% more accurate on move. In other words, there's literally zero reason to run Vstabs because Refined Gun gives you a smaller base aiming circle. It's useless. Like, I've made multiple videos on this. I actually find it really funny that there are people, especially a lot of skilled players, that still try to argue and say that Vstabs has a purpose. Well, now Wargaming is literally nerfing Refined Gun and buffing Vstabs because of the fact Vstabs had no purpose. It's nice now that there is a distinct advantage to running Vstabs versus Refined Gun, and I'm going to be honest, Refined Gun was too strong to begin with. It didn't deserve as much of a buff as it gave. Heavies should not be pinpoint sniping you 250 meters away. You know, inaccurate vehicles should not be sniping you. So this buff is, first of all, going to make it nicer for less accurate heavies, because at closer ranges, they're going to have a smaller aiming circle. The BZT-70, which I hate using sometimes, will now be able to hit its shots more accurately at closer ranges. At further distances, sure, if you were fully aimed in, using refined gun would be better, but for most players that are using these heavies and, vehicles that have less accurate guns, you're probably going to be much better off now using Vstabs, which I'm very happy to see. So overall, I think that this change is a good one. The biggest changes of them all, though, arrive to calibrated shells, enhanced armor, and improved assembly. Calibrated shells is getting a huge nerf. It is going from 8% buff on AP shells to 6%, and APCR is actually getting buffed, going from 5% to 6%, so that means any vehicle like the VZ55, the FE2 and 5B Super Conk, all those vehicles that fire APCR, the Błyskawica, those tanks are getting buffs, which they rightfully deserve. But when it comes to heat, this is the biggest nerf of all. Heat shells are going from a 13% pen buff to a 7% pen buff. That is an absolutely huge nerf to heat shells when using calibrated. It's going to take medium tanks, let's say the T-22 medium, which has about 339 mils of heat, and it's going to have 321 mils of heat when running calibrated in the next update. That is the difference between cutting through an E100 turret and not cutting through an E100 turret, and I'm very happy to see this change. And it gets even bigger when you realize that improved assembly is going to be giving you 5% additional HP, and enhanced armor is going to be giving you 4% additional armor instead of 3%. So that means that vehicles running enhanced armor are going to have slightly better armor next update. Vehicles that are running improved assembly are going to have slightly more hit points, and this is going to directly allow vehicles to not only survive more, but also, with the calibrated shells change, get more bounces. To put this into your mind, let's pull out some heavies, right? This here is the SPHT. This is currently what the SPHT looks like with 380 mils of pen, which is what this vehicle gets when using Cali. However, next update, this pen value is going to go from 379 to 358 millimeters. So let's see what 358 millimeters looks like. And yeah, it's a pretty big difference. You cannot pen the turret. Like, we can see that. At just slight gun depression, you can no longer pen the turret edges of the SPHT, where you previously would have been able to. And if it's using its max gun depression, it's even stronger. This is not even adding in enhanced armor. Running enhanced armor, and this is with the buff next update, is going to make it so that you basically will not be able to pen the turret, and you won't be able to pen the upper plate when loading gold. So yeah, the SPHT alone, you can see, is getting some big changes. But as I said, let's pull out something more noticeable, like an E100. Right now, the E100 doesn't have the best armor. Like, a medium can cut directly through an E100 turret, which is kind of disappointing. Let's take the T-22 medium, which, as I said, has about 339 mils of pen. That's not right. 25,339 mils of pen. So this is what a T-22 medium sees when an E100 is aiming at it, and this is what it looks like with enhanced armor. Next update, if we take that 339 and we turn it to 321, this is what a T-22 sees. Yeah, that's a big difference. Sure, there's that little bar on the bottom, but I mean, in general, you're not going to be able to cut through an E100 turret where you previously would have been able to. And by the way, this isn't even adding in the fact that enhanced armor is still going to have a slight better buff next update. So yeah, in general, the E100 turret is going to be substantially better against mediums, and it's going to be able to actually get bounces. I mean, if you angle the E100 properly, you're even going to struggle to pen the lower plate. So next update, again, we're going to be seeing some huge advantages to running heavies and super heavies. I think the final vehicle I want to break into is the Object 268 version 4. The V4 is one of the most armor-focused vehicles in the game. Frontally, if you're running enhanced armor, the lower plate is about 330 against AP, and the upper superstructure is about 330 as well. Against heat, it's about 340. So that means that currently, if you're using a medium tank, and you have, 340 mils of pen, or yeah, if we do 340 mils of pen here, you can almost just cut through the lower plate of the V4. If you're not running enhanced armor, you can just about cut through the lower plate. Now, if you're running enhanced armor, it's a little bit better, but still, there is a chance, especially if it's angled a little bit like this, or if it's slightly angled to the left, to the right. However, Next update, again, that 340 mils of pen is going to be going down to 320. And with 320 mils of pen, it is physically impossible to pen the V4 anywhere frontally apart from the hatch. This means that the 268 version 4 is now going to be impervious to mediums frontally. And even if we take a look at heavy tanks, right? How about the Kron? The Kron is one of the most annoying tier 10 heavies to fight. However, one of the biggest changes that Wargaming has given to the Kron in recent times is they've nerfed its heat penetration. It currently sits at 350 mils of heat pen. However, if we take the 350 mils of heat, let me just search it really quick. What about 310 heat? All right, so let's see. If you have 310 mils of heat, which the Kron has base, it would now have 332 in the next update instead of 350. That's 18.6 millimeters less penetration, so just about 19 millimeters. So once again, if we pull up armor profile here, this is a 268 version 4 currently, and let's pull out a Kron. So this is what 352 or 350 mils of heat sees when aiming in on a V4, right? You're just able to cut through the superstructure and potentially the lower plate. However, next update, that 350 mils going to 332 means that in a Kron, you are now not able to penetrate the front of a V4 at all. And again, this is the case for most Super Heavies, right? I mean, if we take a look at the E100 again, the Kron will not be able to cut through an E100 turret. Put on enhanced armor, go to heat shells, and we have a 332 millimeters of heat. This is what it's going to look like when aiming in on an E100 turret with a Kron next update. And this is just, flat. If you angle it slightly, you're basically not going to be able to reliably cut through, especially because, as I said, this is going to be even slightly stronger due to us not giving the exact buff of 4% armor instead of 3% that you're currently getting with Enhance. So what does this mean for the game? It means that vehicles that currently are very cringe, like the Kron, like the Concept, which have lower heat pen, are now going to genuinely struggle to deal with heavily armored vehicles. They're not going to be as dominant when using gun depression. Second of all, it means that vehicles that rely on armor are going to be getting stronger. So vehicles that have good armor are going to be getting a heck of a lot better in the armor department. Type 5 Heavy, the IS-4, VK-90, Mouse, all of these super heavies, VK-72, all of these vehicles, which currently rely on their armor to work and generally get punished for it, are going to be much stronger. Mediums are no longer going to be able to reliably pen heavily armored vehicles from the front, meaning that they're now going to have to use their mobility. Isn't that crazy? Using mobility in a medium tank, and now you're going to have to start flanking. This means players who love driving their mediums to the heavy side and farming out the heavy flank are going to have a much harder time doing this. It means that heavies are going to have a much easier time doing their role with their armor and their overall capabilities. So personally, I think that these changes are definitely for the better. I think that it is going to allow vehicles to be much stronger. And for example, the SPHT is going to be crazy strong next update because it's going to be getting even more health. Right now, the SPHT has a base hit point pool of what? It has 3,400. So if I say if a tank has 3,400 HP and gets a 5% buff, what is that? Let's see what that would exactly be. So next update, the SPHT would go from the current HP, which is 3,536, and go to 3,570. That's crazy. You're almost sitting at 3,600 health in the SPHT next update. So you're going to be able to get more health in your heavies, more armor in your heavies, and yeah. So I do think that this is going to reduce turbo battles because obviously heavy tanks are now going to have more hit points, more survivability. Mediums are going to have less penetration. And remember, heavies are losing pen too. Tank destroyers are losing pen. All classes of vehicles are evenly losing penetration. So it's not like just mediums are getting nerfed, but I do think that mediums are going to notice this change the most because they're the ones that really rely on calibrated to allow them to pen heavies. So I'm happy about this. I really am. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, make sure to smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.